The 2025 NCAA March Madness Men's Tournament is back, and this time it is bringing all the feels. The biggest event in college sports tips off March 18th, and you don't want to miss a second of the heart-pumping action. Catch all the clutch shots, big-time plays, upsets, Cinderellas, Blue Bloods, and more. Tune in to the NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship March 18th through April 7th on TBS, CBS, TNT, True TV, and Stream on Max.
Now playing from Disney, the musical movie event of the year arrives in theaters.
My name is Snow White.
Flawless. Exquisite.
Get tickets now.
Waiting on a wind.
Snow White will have you on your feet
I think that's a wonderful idea.
and cheering for more.
I was thinking the same thing.
Experience the magical story.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Snow White.
Disney's Snow White, rated PG. Now playing only in theaters. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets on sale now.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Today at T-Mobile, I'm joined by a special co-anchor.
What up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Snoop Deal Double G.
Snoop, where can people go to find great deals?
Head to T-Mobile.com and get 4 iPhone 16s with Apple Intelligence on us, plus 4 lines for $25.
That's quite a deal, Snoop. And when you switch to T-Mobile, you can save versus the other big guys' comparable plans plus streaming.
Respect. When we up out of here.
See how you can save on wireless and streaming versus the other big guys at T-Mobile.com/switch. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode number 708 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. We're coming to you about an hour or so after Duke takes out Mount St. Mary's in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Of course, that 93-49 win was a lot of fun, so we're going to talk about it. I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. I got Jason Evans with me. Jason, first off, how's your brackets doing so far?
I picked mostly scratch, and the few upsets that I picked have come through for the most part. So I'm doing fairly well. Like I'll be honest, the only pool I pay attention to is I have a family pool where like me, my brother, my sister's family, my mom, all the kids, they're like 18 of us or so, my cousins. We all have a big family pool. We have a huge, ridiculously oversized trophy that goes to the winner. We've been doing this for 20 plus years now. I've only won once, which is just terrible. I need to win more than once if I'm like going to be one of the college basketball, although there are a lot of college basketball fans on this. So all I care about is my family pool. And currently I'm in first place.
Well, that's good. I'm not in first place. I'm doing actually fairly well. So the very first game of Thursday was the Louisville game. Louisville lost. I had Louisville in my Final Four. So off to a terrible start. The second game was the Purdue High Point game. I picked High Point. Again, a loss. We're going to overlook that. The third game, Jason, or the fourth game was Yale against, who were they playing? I forgot who they were playing, but I had Yale, and Yale lost. Those are the only losses I have so far in this tournament. Everything else has been great. So let's hope that holds. I'm actually in a pool with my dad. My dad does one every year with some of his buddies, and he threw an extra one in for me. So I got to show these guys that I know ball and that this podcast thing is going to work out. So far I'm doing okay. I think I'm in 7th place right now. So we'll see how the rest of the day is going. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, both of us are keeping an eye on the UNC game, which has been very close. So we are recording as it is in the final minutes of that game. But let's talk about the Duke game, 93-49 over Mount St. Mary's. A very easy game, Jason. We'll talk about the game first, or sorry, a little bit later, but let me talk about the headlines first. We only got a couple, and that's okay because one, this was a laugher, but also we recorded so soon after the game. We just didn't give you guys time to do that. So that's our bad, but that's just how the schedules are rolling these days. But Jason, what do you have in the form of headlines?
All right, so I got two. Steve Eisgrau gave us Duke's Devils dominate as projections don't dip below 99%. He is referring, of course, to Ken Pomeroy and the other folks who have computers who project your win percentage at any given moment. And for Duke, the percentage never even came close to dipping below 99%. So I like that one. And then I'm going to go ahead, because you let me go, I'm going to go ahead and say the one that you and I both have that is like cream of the crop. This is the best one we've gotten so far. Jared Strauss, Duke turns the Mount into a molehill. Oh, Jared,
Perfect.
That is
Perfect.
Chef's kiss, baby. That is perfect.
I think for other people, there's probably going to be some people who send in headlines after that. I promise you, you're not going to beat that one. And hey, it's great. Everyone can give the old college try, but Jared Strauss has won the day. Jason Beer also had one that I liked, which summed up the end of the game. Old Mother Hubbard glows as Spencer caps Mount St. Duke's eruption to start tournament run in style. I thought that was very good as well. Jason, let's get to everything good from this game. And I want to start with something kind of weird. We took care of the basketball. We only had 2 turnovers.
Dude, that ain't weird. That's amazing.
No, it's just a weird thing to start with. But given the fact that over the last few games, we talked about how our numbers on the turnover side had crept up a little bit, right? We had a couple games hovering around that mythical 12 mark that you and I set years ago. But 2 is great. I'm not even going to say we should do 1. I would like that. I would like 0, but 2 is just fine. We had 1 in each half. And I think the one thing is, despite the fact that in the early part of the second half, we were still air quote sloppy, we took care of the basketball. We didn't allow Mount St. Mary's to mount to any sort of momentum through taking the ball away from us and getting points on the other end.
Yeah, 2 turnovers and 21 assists. If you can't do that math, that's a 10.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. Oh, I'll take that number any day of the week. Really impressive. Every single starter for Duke had multiple assists, including Man. And Man usually does not get many assists. It was just
Man. That's not Man's job, right? But he still got in on the fun.
Tyrese has 5. Coop had 4. Sion had 3. It's just a beautiful example of the team passing the. By the way, Patrick Ngongba had 2 assists, had 1 great pass that, newsflash, will be showing up in the play of the day. Play of the game, I mean, no question about it. It was a great effort by Duke in terms of taking care of the ball, sharing the ball, being under control at all times. Honestly, the game almost seemed too easy. I don't say this to disparage Mount St. Mary's. I don't say this to put down the effort that Duke put into winning this game, but it just felt easy at times. The number of lobs that Duke had, the number of wide open shots that Duke got. Honestly, this felt a little bit like a scrimmage almost to me, like an exhibition game. And by the way, no one on Duke plays more than 24 total minutes. The minutes were spread around over 8, 9 different guys who, in fact, Darren Harris gets in with more than 10 minutes left in this contest.
We were up 30 at the time, by the way. He came in. That's how. I mean, that's the good thing, right? Is we said we hope that we can get guys. We'll talk about Cooper in a second. We'll get these guys in, get them some run, build up a lead, and be able to, rest some guys because we're going to have another game in 48 hours, and to be able to bring in that second unit and Jason, they actually built the lead from there. Like I said, I think it was a 32-point lead. We ended up winning by 44. So good job to the second unit for coming in and showing that, hey, we can play ball too.
Yeah. And I mean, there are just so many different guys that you can cite as having a big game. There's no one who's had an overwhelmingly statistical game other than I guess Tyrese Proctor hit 6 out of 8 3-pointers, which is absurd. Just crazy.
Yeah, he was on.
He took 1 heat check. But other than that, every one of them was in flow. We've talked about how much Tyrese struggled, at the end of last season, how much he was not hitting big shots when Duke needed him to in the losses to NC State. And here he comes out and has, arguably his best game in the NCAA tournament in his career by leading the team with 19 points, 6 of 8 on his threes, led the team with 5 assists, also threw in a few rebounds. Tyrese had an outstanding game, but it was a game where, again, like everybody was doing it. Caleb Foster. We got the good Caleb Foster in this game for sure. Caleb hits 3 out of 4 3-pointers and scores 12 points, in just 20 minutes of playing time and looked, completely in control. His 3-point shot looked gorgeous in this game. I hope we continue to get that, Caleb. Boy, do I hope that.
Jason, it's funny, right? You talked about Tyrese and how last year he struggled during the postseason, both in the ACC tournament. Like he struggled, but he still had 28 points in that game. But he had struggling from shooting and taking care of the basketball. And then in the tournament, shooting wise, it went down at the wrong point of the year. And if you think about this year, him and Caleb, I believe, are the only 2 players in the main rotation that have seen action in the NCAA tournament, right? Like this is Sion Harris's first time in the tournament. I believe this, obviously, Malik Brown didn't play. The freshman obviously is their first time, but short of Cameron Sheffield, right? But Cameron Sheffield's not in the rotation, right? So
yeah, you're right. I didn't even thought about that. I mean, experienced team, but yes, Sion James has never played in an NCAA tournament game.
Right. So the fact that he was able to step up and kind of show the way for a lot of this game was great. He actually ended up 2 rebounds shy of a 10-5-5. Cooper Flagg, 14 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, plus 31 in just 22 minutes of play. He is 1 assist shy of a 10-5-5. And Jason Big Pat is 1 point, 2 rebounds, and 2 blocks shy of a 10-5-5. So we had a lot of distribution of production in this game. A lot of guys stepped up, and you mentioned, Caleb Foster off the bench. Darren Harris, when he came in, looked really good. Neil Bekovich was all over the place in his limited minutes. And I think when you look at the top down, everyone got whatever nerves that may have been present in it being, again, save for 2 players, their first NCAA tournament game. They were able to get that out of the way and realize that, hey, the intensity is there. And I thought the one thing that can be missing in the first few minutes of a game, particularly a 1 against a 16, is intensity. Our intensity, we did not want anyone to be talking about Duke might be on the ropes. We didn't want those those notifications to hit phones at any point during this game other than, hey, Duke's up by 30. You might want to switch to another game. And that's what happened. That's the intensity that they brought, and they need to continue to bring it.
Yeah, Donald, all my notifications that I got from ESPN on my phone were, watch this highlight of Man or Coop or Pat. It was like it just one after another. Hey, have a look at this amazing dunk. Have a look at this amazing dunk. On and on and on. I want to talk about the defense because I actually think, Duke scores 93 points. We had 54 points in the first half, which is just absurd. I actually think the defense may even be a better story. Not that Mount St. Mary's is a great offensive team, but holding them to 40, anytime you hold a team less than 50, you're doing something special on defense. They only get 49 points, Mount St. Mary's. They hit 30% of their shots overall, just 18% of their threes. And it wasn't because they were just missing. It was because Duke was in their face every single possession. Mount St. Mary's must have been like, what does it take to get an easy shot? Because they just could not get anything easy. Donald, when we did the preview of these guys, I talked about they had 3 or 4 guys that I said, these guys are dangerous. These are the guys you need to look out for. These are the guys that probably could cause problems for you. Not a single one of those guys had a big game. The only guy from Mount St. Mary's who did much of anything was a reserve guard, some guy named Keys, who hit some threes. Other than that, the rest of their team just struggled mightily to get anything going. And I know that the Duke scouting guys had identified the Mount St. Mary guys that we needed to look after and said, don't let that guy don't let Dallas Hobbs and don't let Dola Adebayo go off on you. And Duke was like, no problem. We will not let that happen. Hobbs and Adebayo, who are their best players, combined for 10 total points in this game. It was just outstanding defense by Duke. And by the way, one aspect of it that I wanted to point out really quickly, with 8.5 minutes left in the first half, Duke committed their first foul of the game. We went almost 12 minutes of the game without committing a foul while playing incredible in-your-face defense that wasn't allowing Mount St. Mary's to do much of anything.
Programming note: UNC just lost 71-64 over Ole Miss, so they are out of the tournament. ACC not doing great except for Duke, so we got to carry the flag now.
I think that I think Duke may need. No, I was going to say I was going to say I think we may need to make the Final Four for the ACC to have a winning record in the tournament.
We can win the whole thing, and then they can say, "Oh,
the ACC record will look really good."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, look really good. One last thing on the defense. We held Mount St. Mary's to 30% from the floor and 19% from three. Again, our defense was able to smother them at any given turn. They were not getting easy shots, and again, even the few that they hit weren't backbreakers or momentum builders. They were more like, for them, like, oh my God, we've seen the ball hit the net. It can happen. And then Duke's like, yeah, no, that's fine. And then we take the ball away from them next time down the floor and go the other way. We forced 11 turnovers, which is great. Also, Jason, on the other side, I know Tyrese Proctor, you mentioned, hit 6 3-pointers. Well, Duke as a team hit 14 of them. Another thing that had been kind of like not as great the last couple of games. We had been hitting 8, 9 or whatever, but to get 14 in this shows, and especially in Raleigh, where we don't really play well all the time, right? We've had our struggles in Raleigh, not just in the NCAA tournament or ACC tournament, but also when we play NC State. So it's good to have that momentum as well. We are the team that travels the shortest to play in the NCAA tournament, and we are playing like the home team so far.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of three-pointers, Neil Begovic hits his first three-pointer in a Duke uniform. Just the second three-pointer of his career. He hit one for Stanford a few years ago, like his sophomore year, freshman, or something like that. But yeah, just his second three-pointer of his career. Way to go, Neil. Donald, would it be inappropriate for me to now transfer to the bad? Because there are a couple...
Yeah, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about, sure.
Yeah, and I was going to play off of those three-pointers because other than Tyrese and Caleb Foster, the rest of the Duke team actually did not shoot very well from three-point land. I mean, Tyrese and Caleb combined to go 9 of 12 on three-pointers. The rest of the team was not so good. We saw Sion James couldn't make a shot. He was 0 of 5 from the field in this game. Couldn't make anything. Isaiah Evans 0 of 5 on his three-pointers. Mason Gillis 0 of 4 on his three-pointers. This wasn't a game where Duke was just lights out all over the place to score the 93 points that we scored. And Con Knippel, who has been outstanding lately, ACC tournament MVP. Con just hits 1 out of 4 threes, only scores 6 points. Sion only had 2 points. Isaiah only has 4 total points, although Isaiah hit a couple nice, runners, short range shots. We're usually used to him shooting nothing but long range shots. But yeah, I thought, Duke had a couple guys hot, but Duke had a lot of guys who usually do better, who struggled a bit scoring-wise in this game.
I mentioned earlier that we played a little sloppy in the second half, and it's almost tongue-in-cheek because, like I said, we were playing sloppy, and somehow we built the lead from 32 points to 40 in the span of 5 minutes. But after the game, the immediate interview after the game, I believe it was Tracy Wilson was interviewing John Shire, and John Shire had one of his kids kind of crawling on the floor underneath him. But he mentioned, he's like, yeah, we did great, but there are some things to work on, and we need to clean up some of the details, right? Because they know Baylor's coming in, and they're going to try and beat us, and they have guys, obviously we'll talk about, that are familiar with Duke in very special ways, right? And so there's going to be a lot of hype around this game, and they know that they need to play 40 minutes of total basketball as opposed to 35. And I think that's the takeaway from this game, is what he mentioned was, hey, we need to make sure that we're playing Duke basketball all the time and not just turn it on here and there, because good teams will get you when you do that. And so again, it's funny saying that when we just beat a team by 44 points. But again, we're in the NCAA tournament, and it's those little details that are going to be the difference between winning and losing down the line.
Yeah, the other stuff I wanted to mention the bad really quickly was, and you alluded to this a little bit, there was a 6 or 7 minute stretch in the second half where Duke got pretty sloppy. Let's just be clear about it. We
not from turnovers, just right execution.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to say we took some poor shots. The D did not feel connected. We were allowing them to not score a lot, but they scored a little bit of that. We just felt like we lost our focus for a little bit. And prior to that, we'd been doubling them. As early as like 4 minutes into the second half, the score was 61-30, and Duke was doubling them. And then we let them, get some buckets, and Duke sort of slowed down a bit and wasn't scoring as much as we had been, and we were no longer doubling them. And then we went on a 19-0 run. It was 19-0. St. Mary's literally didn't score from like the 13-minute mark to the 5-minute mark. They went like close to 8 minutes without scoring. Just wow. But again, in those first like 6-7 minutes of the second half, Duke lost their focus, and you cannot afford to do. Yeah, you can do it against a 16 seed. You cannot afford from this moment going forward. You cannot afford a lapse like that. And the team just needs to recognize that focus needs to be there all the time.
Yeah, if you want to call this the last day of spring break before we get back to class, like, okay, fine, right? That 5-minute stretch. You want to just chalk that up to, hey, let the kids have some fun for a minute. Okay, cool. But now it's time to knuckle up. We have one mission, one goal, and to do that, we need to play total basketball here. Anything else before we get to the play of the game?
Yeah, I was going to say, before we get to the play of the game, the most surprising play of the game was Cooper Flagg blowing a layup on a 3-on-1 fast break where he was just standing there. How did that happen?
So this is actually kind of a good and bad.
I think Tyrese surprised.
He
expected Tyrese to shoot the ball, and he was a little surprised when he got it.
I was going to say, we were very unselfish. And I think on that play and maybe another play, we were way too unselfish. And I think there was a point where, like, John Shire wasn't yelling at Cooper because he missed it. He was yelling at Tyrese Proctor because he's like, I get it, man. Like, you want to up your assist total. I get it. But, like, shoot the ball. That is your shot. The reason why we missed that is because you gave up your shot, right? And don't be Hamilton. Like that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, that was, again, a nice little tongue-in-cheek kind of bad, but we could be selfish sometimes. We could take it to the racket and jam it. No one's going to have any problem with you not getting an assist on a play because you took it the length of the floor and you yammed it home.
And then the other thing is, I know we're going to do a play of the game. I want you to be thinking about it. I think we should do a player of the game. We usually do player of the week. I think for the NCAA tournament, every game gets a player of the game. So be thinking about that. While you're thinking about that, I'll go ahead and give you my play of the game. I sort of have two contenders. And I'm going to go with, as I mentioned earlier, the play where Sion James feeds Big Pat. He's like right next to the foul line, sort of foul line extended, so to speak. And he almost instantly throws like how'd you describe that? Like a sidearm kind of pass. It wasn't behind the back, but it was just sort of like to the side to Cooper Flagg for
it
a
was
ridiculous.
It was great footwork because he caught the ball in a position where he didn't have to turn his head to know that Cooper Flagg was drifting towards the basket.
Exactly.
And so all he had to do was just a quick side pass. And again, because he didn't have to turn his head or give any indication that he was going to go in that direction, Mount St. Mary's was not ready for it.
Yeah. And Coop ends up with a ridiculous dunk. There are several nominees. There are several other plays that could have been the one, but I love that one the best with about 12 and a half minutes left in the first half. What's your play of the game?
That was it. That was the one. 12-18 left in the first half. Because, again, I think it established there was a point earlier in the game, very early in the game, where Cooper Flagg went up for an and one, and he kind of went up and got fouled and kind of had to fall somewhat awkwardly. And I know that was the first time that everyone kind of gave a collective, like, breathe in and hold it, because you're like, okay, is the ankle okay when it comes to stuff like that? That play right there was a signal to me that the bounce was back, right? Like he had to jump awkwardly to get around his man in the air and then dunk it on him. So to do that, you need two healthy ankles. I'm convinced his ankle's healthy. He's ready to go.
All right. So if that's if you agree with me that that's the play of the game, I want to shout out my honorable mention, which was with about 8.5 minutes left in the first half, when Proctor fed Cooper Flagg in the lane. And the D, of course, was like, oh, shit, Cooper Flagg's got the ball in the middle of the lane, and then moved toward him. And he instantly threw a lob to man for a dunk that was just crazy. I was like, oh, man, it's just Duke's ability to recognize what the D was doing and take advantage of that was sublime in this game. I mean, that's the reason we scored the 90. Like I said, it wasn't us shooting lights out. It wasn't anything else. It was Duke recognizing what the D was going to give them is why we scored the 93 points in this game.
I was going to say, there was a few plays where guys were throwing the ball in the air and they're like, hey, I'm going to throw this ball 12 feet and 2 inches into the air because there's nobody on this planet in this gym that can get it except for number 9. And number 9 did get it on almost every occasion. So, and I think there was even one where it would have been a great play. And I'm sure he was surprised that it found him. But again, early in the game, there was a play over the top. Cooper fed Pat. And Pat turned around and realized that the closest person to him was the guy selling hot dogs in the 5th row and was like, oh my goodness. And as he laid it in and missed it, he just turned around. And he still was like, oh, the ball hit the ground. Like nobody was around him, even to pick up the ball and go. That's how wide open a play Cooper Flagg created with just one simple move. So simply incredible there. Jason, we're going to take a break because
I said I wanted to do player of the game. I want to do player of the game.
Player of the game.
You go first because mine's surprising. Go ahead. Who's your player of the game?
Big Pat.
Oh, mine isn't surprising. You have the same player of the game that I do.
Big Pat had 9 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 blocks. I said 3 blocks and 1 steal. The man was everywhere. And again, to be a part, it's almost to the point where Big Pat cannot be considered, used to be part of the second unit, right? That deep bench guy. Now he was what, the second guy off the bench?
No, he was the first guy off the bench.
He was the first guy off the bench.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he came in for man-man, right? And they mentioned like, oh yeah, Malik Brown would usually be this guy, but it's going to be Big Pat today. Big Pat came in and he has asserted himself in the last couple of weeks as a guy who was a main part of the first unit of rotation. Not a starter, sure, but a guy who can step in as the 6th man and get buckets, get rebounds, have a lot of high energy, be active on defense, get blocks. He's doing it all. And so, again, in a game where there's a ton of people who deserve praise, I'm going to give it to Big Pat.
I thought I was going to surprise you. I can't believe you picked the same guy I did. The thing I wanted to note about Big Pat is he is turning into a real rim protector, which has not been his reputation. It's not something that people thought we were going to get from. He is a great offensive player. His touch around the basket, his knowledge of where he is and where other players are is really great on offense. And the book on him was, it's going to take him some time to learn the defense, and he's not going to be the rim protector that Khaman Maluach is or Derek Lively and on. And, Duke's had a lot of them in recent years. And I want to be clear, he's not yet, but he now has blocks in 4 consecutive games. Basically, since Malik Brown went down the second time, Big Pat has a block in every one of those games. In the past 2 games against Louisville and Mount St. Mary's, he has 3 blocks in both of those games. I mean, he's protecting the rim really, really nicely. He is intimidating in there on defense the same way he is on offense. Yeah, I love it. And, at some point, I'm really hoping John Shire has the very, very difficult decision of how do I divide up the minutes among man, Big Pat, and Malik Brown. This is a problem I can't wait for us to have.
Yeah, and I don't know. We're talking a little bit down the road here, but could his biggest recruiting job be saying, Big Pat, you and Malik can be the 2 next year. You guys can combine, be a force alongside the Boozer twins. But we will save that for after the season.
You're way down
way down the road, way down the road. But it's fun to think about because of how he has come around in the last couple of weeks. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, Jason, we have another game to prepare for. Jeremy Roach and the Baylor Bears. They're the next opponent. Let's talk about him after the break. All right, Duke fans, when it comes to college basketball and March Mania, one thing is for sure. Nothing's for sure. Upsets, buzzer beaters, Cinderella's advancing, top seeds going home early, hopefully not us. It's all going to happen, but bet the unexpected every upset, every day with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, with live betting, Donald, exclusive content, promos, parlays, oh my God, some amazing parlays. DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. And if it's your first time using it, we've got something really special for you here. For $5 bet, you can get $200 in bonus bets instantly. It is a great deal.
That's right. So bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DukeBB. That's code DukeBB for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
All right, Duke fans, are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating, well, easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. So you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you.
That's right, Jason. You know, everyone has busy lives, and some are more on the go than others, you and I included. Factor takes the guesswork out of those meals, and with 40 options on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. And here's the best part for me. The meals are delicious. I love the Factor meals. It's delicious food, nutritious, easy prep, and it caters to your schedule. It's a no-brainer.
All right, so eat smarter with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast. Use that code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Lowe's knows what makes SpringFest savings even better are member-only doorbuster deals. Right now, rewards members can save $40 on an Allen & Roth Chesler Gold faucet. Was $99, now $59. Plus, save $110 on a Cobalt 40-volt battery trimmer and blower combo kit. Was $279, now $169. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/24 while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
All right, we are back. And Jason, we turn our attention to a game that we don't know the time yet. It's going to be sometime on Sunday. They will announce the time sometime late tonight, Friday night. But the next game in the round of 32 will be against the Baylor Bears. They are 20-14 on the season, 10-10 in the conference of the Big 12. They were 7th in the Big 12. And Jason, I think we'll talk about some of the players that we are familiar with. But just to get out of the way before we dive into who they've played, you have to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be a storyline. It already is. As soon as the game was over against Mount St. Mary's, I mentioned Tracy Wilson had interviewed John Shire, and she mentioned the name Jeremy Roach, of course, who played 4 years at Duke. And, of course, very quickly, John Shire was quick to say, hey, this is great. Like, we love him, and we obviously know him very well, and we're looking forward to seeing him. But this is Duke versus Baylor. This isn't, Jeremy Roach versus Duke or versus John Shire or anything like that. And that's how they're going to approach it, right? Because if you think about it, there are several guys on this team who did not play with Jeremy Roach. They may know him, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't played with him. So this is a new team that Jeremy Roach is facing. And so also Baylor has a lot of guys that we are familiar with and make, I know the player part might be a little easy for you because they're guys we have seen throughout the years, and one recruit that we followed very closely before he committed to Baylor. But let's go through, Jason, the teams that they have beaten. And I said there were 20 and 14 on the year. They have some incredible top 100 top 100 KenPom wins. Arkansas, St. John's, they beat Utah twice. Cincinnati, Arizona State, Kansas, before Kansas got terrible. UCF, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, TCU, Kansas State, and Mississippi State, which is the game they won as the 9 seed in this NCAA tournament. Their losses are it's almost a who's who as well of great teams. Now, the funny thing is they started out, I think they were ranked like in the top 12, 15 in the country as the season started. They played that big matchup against Gonzaga to open up the season and got absolutely belt stomped by Gonzaga. But the teams that they lost to, it's not like they got the doors blown off of them in all these games. Tennessee, great team. UConn, defending national champions. Iowa State, Arizona twice, TCU, BYU, Texas Tech. They lost to Houston twice. The only teams that they lost to that did not make the tournament, TCU, Colorado, and Cincinnati, of which Colorado was probably the worst loss. All of those teams, mind you, are in the top 100 of KenPom. So this team is battle-tested. They may not have won all their games, but they have definitely beaten a lot of teams. They will not be scared of the Duke Blue Devils.
No, they definitely won't. This is an extremely, extremely talented roster with multiple guys who are likely to be in the NBA at some point. Let me just discuss the analytics on them really quickly. They're currently 29th in Ken Pomeroy's rankings, 16th on offense, a really excellent offensive team, 56th on defense, not as good there, but really good on offense. Interestingly, they play at a fairly slow pace. I mean, look, Baylor will get out on the fast break against you, but if you get them into a half-court game, they don't mind that at all, and they'll grind it out a little bit in the half court. The hallmark of their offense is their offensive rebounding. They get almost 36% of their missed shots, even though they're actually a really small team, but they just work super hard and they position themselves really well to get offensive rebounds. They're one of the top 20 offensive rebounding teams in all of college basketball. I mentioned that they're kind of small. There's no one. Duke is not going to play anyone on this Baylor team who is taller than 6'7". And it's not like it's a bunch of 6'6", 6'7" guys. They've got several guys who are pretty small, like Robert Wright III, Jeremy Roach. Those guys are going to be like 4, 5, maybe even 6 inches shorter than everyone else on the floor for Duke. Despite all that, this Baylor team does a really nice job of protecting the ball, of moving it around. They don't let the fact that other teams are probably longer than them affect them a lot. They don't get to the free throw line a tremendous amount, and they aren't like a dynamite three-point shooting team. They're around 34% on their threes. But, this is a team that, if you don't turn the ball over, if you grab a lot of offensive rebounds, you're going to be good on offense. On defense, they're very good at forcing turnovers. They're actually a very poor defensive rebounding team, which is kind of shocking. I talked about how good they were at offensive rebounding, that they allow like almost a third of all missed shots, 31% of missed shots to be offensive rebounded. So they're not a very good defensive rebounding team. They also allow teams to shoot a lot of three-pointers and to hit a lot of three-pointers. They allow opponents to hit better than 35% from three. If you want to know one reason why Baylor, didn't have as good a year as they expected, why they're not even top 50 on defense, is because they allow teams to shoot and make a pretty fair number of three-pointers. That is a key part of Duke's offensive attack. One strange quirk about them that's sort of weird, I saw this stat and I was just like, how does that happen? They give up an incredible number of assists. Like close to 60% of baskets made against Baylor come off an assist. They're like one of the 30 worst teams in the country in terms of assist percentage. I'm not sure what the cause of that is. I've watched them a little bit and nothing sort of jumped out at me about the way they play defense. I mean, like, teams that play a lot of zone, like Syracuse used to give up an incredible number of assists when they played a lot of zone, but Baylor doesn't play a lot of zone. I'm not sure what it is about them, but it's just something to keep an eye on because this Duke team is great at moving the ball around and getting a ton of assists, and Baylor is apparently a team that's not going to stop that.
I think part of it is, and I think you touched on it slightly, is the fact that their tempo has been very, very slow this season, and in particular the last couple of weeks. This game that they just played earlier today against Mississippi State was the fastest game they played in like 2 weeks. They've had games where they've had possessions under 60, right? 58, 58. It was like 61, 60 during the Big 12 tournament. So the problem is they slow it down on both offense and defense. And it allows teams, when they have the ball, to be able to pass around on them and find a good shot. And it's because they almost let them. And that has been a gift and a curse. Sometimes they play some good teams that just can't hit water from a boat. And so they're happy to let them pass the ball around and get good shots and miss them. But when teams start hitting them, that's when they go, okay, we've kind of cut our game down quite a bit because we just let them have the ball for 30 seconds. They just hit a three. And now we have to figure out a way in our offense to speed up a little bit, despite the fact that's not what they want to do. So it's interesting. And you think about, you'll talk about some of the players. Some of the players we have discussed over the years are, again, not in a bad way. They're ball stoppers, right? The game slows down because of the fact that they require the ball and they require it for a lengthy period of time to make the play that they want to make.
Well, and if we're going to talk ball stoppers, let's start the discussion about the players with Jeremy Roach. And again, I want to stress, even though it's not the style that Duke plays nowadays, being a ball stopper, being a guy who is ball dominant is not necessarily a bad thing in college basketball. So I'm not criticizing Jeremy Roach, but Jeremy Roach is a ball stopper. There's no question about that. He was he transferred to Baylor. He was a starter earlier in the year, but he's moved into a sixth man kind of role in recent weeks. His minutes have dropped off a little bit. I'm going to explain why that is, but there's a really good reason that Jeremy Roach is playing a little bit less, and it honestly is that they tried him at point guard his whole career. Like Duke tried him at point guard. Every time someone tries him at point guard, they go, this doesn't quite work. We need to move him off the ball. And when Baylor wanted to do that, it really, they elevated Robert Wright's role, and we'll talk more about Robert Wright in a second, and it's meant that Jeremy Roach is playing a little bit less. On the season, Jeremy Roach is averaging 10.3 points per game. The three-point shooting, remember a year ago, Jeremy Roach was just outstanding from three. He hit better than 43% last year for Duke. It's fallen a good bit. He's down at 34% this year. If you look across his whole career, that's what Jeremy Roach really is. Like last year was an aberration, I think. Most of his career, he's been like 32, 33, 34%, and that's where he is. The problem they're having this year with him is that he's only hitting 41% of his two-point shots. Look, Donald, we know from watching Jeremy Roach that he is someone who's really, really good at getting mid-range jumpers. I hate them. I talk about it all the time. But Jeremy Roach is someone who gets a lot of mid-range jumpers. And in his career, he's basically been like between 48 and 50% on those two-point shots, those mid-range jumpers, which is fairly good. This year, he's only at 41%. And that's a big difference in his play. And the last thing I want to mention about Jeremy is that since he's moved to the bench, he's only been in double figures twice. His scoring is way down. He's only averaging a little less than 8 points per game. And in fact, part of that is that he had one game against Oklahoma State. He had a big game. He scored 21 points. If you take out that one game, since he moved to the bench, he's only averaging like 6 points per game over like 9 of his past 10 games. He's just not as big a factor for them as he used to be earlier in the year.
And, again, pointing out one of the strengths that we know he has, we remember playoff Jeremy, right? We remember him in the NCAA tournament getting to the rack.
March Roach, yep.
March Roach getting to the rack and getting buckets. And sometimes that played into the defense, right? It played into teams that had good rim protectors. They would feast on that. But the one thing that if you say that there has been a weak link in our defense, it has been at times that we let the guards kind of get into the lane and back us down a little bit to get points. Now, I'm not saying that Jeremy Roach is going to try to do that, but it is something to note because if he's able to get into the lane, that's where he is most dangerous. And that is where, if there is a weak link to our defense, that is where it is at its weakest, is when the guards are able to penetrate and get into the lane and be able to make a decision with the basketball from 10 feet as opposed to 30.
All right, there are a couple other guys I want to talk about. The first one is someone that any Duke fan who has watched Duke basketball the past few years will be very familiar with. That's Noched Omier. Came over from Miami. Duke played him like 2-3 times a year for the past several years.
Yeah.
Really
We're sick of him.
I'm sorry?
I said, as Duke fans, we're sick of him. We're sick of playing
exactly.
him.
He's only 6'7", but he is 240 pounds. He knows how to move his weight around, position his body to get rebounds, especially offensive rebounds. And he creates space for himself on offense. He is Baylor's leading scorer at almost 16 points per game. He is Baylor's leading rebounder at almost 11 rebounds per game. He is who we saw at Miami. Not tall, but a space eater on the inside. And he is one of the top 30 offensive rebounders in all of college basketball. And he's hitting better than 62% of his 2-point shots. Outstanding numbers. He will present real problems for Man and Big Pat and anyone else who happens to pick him up. Duke needs to make sure that he isn't able to get our guys in foul trouble and that he isn't able to dominate on the inside like we saw him do sometimes when he was at Miami. Donald, get in, because I know you watched him extensively at Miami.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of what I was going to say. The fact that he's able to get to a spot, the fact that he's able to hold his ground, despite the fact that he's not tall. Like you said, he's more wide. And I think also his touch with the basketball is something to definitely look out for, because he's able to, he's not going to sit there and take you to the rim and just power jam it, right? He can lay it in off the glass. He can do a little jump hook. He can do even like that turnaround from like 5 or 6 feet. He's going to try and back you down to a point where, again, he has several decisions of where he can go with the basketball, and all of them involve, using the glass. He's able to do that so well. And I think the one thing that he is susceptible to doing at times is he usually likes to keep the ball right around his face when he gets the ball, so that he can kind of go and kind of do his thing. But again, he's not that tall. That's something that you tell like man, right? Bring it up by your face, because your face is 7 feet above the ground and no one else is. But when you're 6'7", you still are able to get your hands in on the ball. And because of that, he does get swiped at times when he does try to make one of those moves. You may see a Sion James or whoever's that off guard, not necessarily come in to double team him, but come in for that quick swipe. And you know who's very good at this, but he hasn't quite got there yet? Slim. When he's in the game, there's times where he'll leave his man and go just to try and poke the ball away and make it where someone else can dive on it, grab it, and we can go. Look out to see how they combat that, because I think Omier going hot is what's going to make Baylor get hot. But if you're able to frustrate him and present different looks to him and make it where he has a difficult time shooting the basketball and also holding onto the basketball, they can't do anything if they don't have the basketball in their hands, right? So if you're able to get a couple takeaways from him, that's going to frustrate him, and then he's going to start forcing stuff, which he did at Miami.
So the last couple players I want to talk about are a pair of freshmen. This game may have more key freshmen playing in it than any other game in the NCAA tournament for the rest of the year. The first one of them is, of course, VJ Edgecombe, who's going to go, top 5 in the lot.
Top 5.
Yeah. Someone who Duke desperately, if you've listened to this podcast in the past, last spring, we were talking a lot about wanting VJ Edgecombe. And in fact, there was a little bit of a bidding war between Duke and Baylor for him. And Baylor won that. It's fine. He is their second leading scorer at 15 points per game. He struggled with his shot earlier in the year, did VJ. But he's really come on in the past couple months or so. He was only hitting 34% from 3 on the season. But in conference play against Big 12 opponents, he's up close to 40% on his 3-point shots. That shows you how he's improved since early in the season. But the 3-pointer is not he hits them, he takes them, but that's not the thing you're afraid of with VJ Edgecombe. With VJ Edgecombe, you're terrified of him attacking the rim, getting in the lane, getting to the bucket. He finishes with great flair around the basket. He's probably more even counting Cooper. He's probably more explosive than anyone on the Duke team, just in terms of getting a running head start, heading to the bucket, and with a head of steam. I'm not sure. He is a challenge for Duke to cover. I imagine it. It sort of initially will fall to Con Knipple, but VJ Edgecombe has the kind of body, the kind of explosion that is going to be a problem for anybody on Duke. Maybe like a Sion. I think maybe Sion is perhaps the best guy to cover him, but Sion's going to have his hands full with the guy I'm going to talk about next. But VJ Edgecombe is just he is an incredibly potentially great player. And you hope that he doesn't have one of those games where he just goes off like crazy. Last thing I should note about him, and then I'll let you get a little comment in, Donald. Khan and Cooper especially should know VJ Edgecombe really well. Like those guys, they played against each other, with each other, practiced together and against each other in all the spring, I should say, all-star games. They should know each other a good bit. And look, there was a time when VJ thought he could contend with Cooper for being the number one pick in this draft. Didn't work out for him, but that's not because he hasn't had an excellent season.
I was going to say also, he has Cassius Stanley-like athleticism. You mentioned his explosiveness, but
yeah,
the athleticism is there. It has been surpassed already, right, by, Cooper Flagg just absolutely ending Guillermo Diaz-Graham's life, and then several other Cooper Flagg plays along the way. But he had the best player of the year for literally the first night of college basketball until that Pitt game, when he absolutely dunked the life out of Mark Few's son in that Gonzaga game. And it was at the end of a 40-point blowout, as I mentioned, but it was it was a move that made everyone go, oh, this guy, when he figures it out, is going to be a problem. And that athleticism is what allows him to get into the lane, what allows him to get to the rack, and he'll finish through contact too. We've seen that too. So you got to be real careful with him. And like you said, don't let him, go on a tear because his plays are momentum, to the max, right? Like he's not sitting there hitting a couple threes and make you force a timeout. He's there trying to dunk in your face a couple of times and make you have to make a substitution.
All right, one other guy I want to talk about, another freshman, that's Robert Wright III. This is the guy who moved into the starting lineup as the starting point guard, sort of supplanted Jeremy Roach. Roach moved to the bench when Roach had been hurt a little bit as well, but he really moved to the bench when Robert Wright got a bigger and bigger role for this Baylor team. Robert Wright III is part of what a lot of people are saying is the greatest high school basketball team of all time. The Montverde team from last year that included Cooper Flagg. It included Derek Queen, who's the best freshman in the Big Ten playing for Maryland. Included Asa Newell, who might have been the best freshman in the SEC this year. Just an absolutely and Liam. Oh God, plays for UConn. I can't believe I'm blanking on the guy's name.
McNeely?
Liam McNeely. That's the other guy. Was the other starter on that team. I couldn't. Literally, those five guys are all like major impact freshmen on the national college basketball scene, and they played high school basketball together. Cooper Flagg knows Robert Wright III. The problem is Cooper Flagg will not get to guard Robert Wright III because Robert Wright is a point guard and Cooper is more of a power forward type. Robert Wright is an excellent offensive initiator. He's a guy who gets his own shot, sort of like VJ Edgecombe. He gets to the rim. He's not nearly as explosive as VJ, but he has great body control in the air. He knows how to score from difficult angles and stuff like that. He just finishes really, really well. Averages better than 11 points per game, better than 4 assists per game. He's the guy that the ball will start in his hands. And quite a lot of their possessions are Robert Wright creates something. Maybe it's something for someone else, maybe it's something for himself, but it's just like not a lot of passing, just Robert Wright doing his thing. He is going to be a major matchup problem for Duke. If Duke struggles in this game, I'm guaranteeing you right now that Robert Wright and VJ Edgecombe, probably both of them, will be having pretty good games. It's remarkable, by the way, how connected Duke and Baylor are in terms of like knowing each other really well. This is going to be playing against your friends, playing against guys that you've played with a lot. And one last super quick note I wanted to make. They have a guy, Baylor does, Langston Love, who had missed most of this season with injuries. His whole career's been injured, honestly. And he's only played in like 18 games this year. Like he missed a bunch of games with injury. He's finally back and playing a more regular role. He started for them against Mississippi State and scored 15 points. He was their second leading scorer in the game. He's kind of a wild card. It's hard to tell what you're going to get from Langston Love, but he's another one of those guys that if Baylor has a big game against Duke, it could be because Langston Love goes off. It's worth noting he's only hitting 30% of his threes on the season, but a year ago, he hit 48% from three-point range. Just an outrageous number of three-pointers that he got last year, and it'll be interesting to see, if Baylor if Baylor has a big game against Duke, I'm imagining it's these guys, their backcourt of Langston Love, VJ Edgecombe, and Robert Wright, who will be leading the way for them.
Yeah, I also want to mention real quick Jaden Nunn, who comes out of Flint, but he's the guy that's been hitting the threes for them this year. You mentioned Langston Love and how he's capable of doing it, right? And he's done it in the past. Jaden Nunn hit twice as many threes as Langston Love did, and he is shooting 41% from three.
That's partially because Love was injured for so much of the year. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, but he leads the team by far in number of threes attempted and made. So again, when he checks into the game, he's not going to start, but when he checks into the game, look out for him because he's going to be a guy that's going to come in kind of like Slim does, right? He's going to come in looking to shoot. All right, Jason, let's move to the things to watch this game, and I'll start with this. This team, Baylor, obviously has the guys that can make you a little bit worried. And by worried, I mean they're a team that when we say that, the word is out that everyone wants to play Duke physically to kind of frustrate them, this is a team that can do it, right? They have the guys who can make it frustrating for us when we have the ball. You mentioned the fact that they allow teams to kind of pass it around to them to get a good shot. Let's utilize that. That is a strength of ours. We love it, getting points off the pass. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think they're going to allow us to do that. The minute we start getting into the paint and really trying to force things down low, that's when they're going to start trying to get physical against us. And I think that is where we may struggle a little bit against Baylor. So we need to kind of watch that. I think the other thing that I'm looking at is you mentioned guys like Robert Wright, VJ Edgecombe, even Noshed Ormier when he's in the paint. Keep those guys in front of you. Will you let those guys kind of get around? Because they're going to do some wild passes as well. They're going to try and find ways, especially against our defense, to try and get open. One thing that teams have tried to go to, not all the time, but at times, has been that backdoor pass because they're just trying to figure out ways to get guys in position where they have the ball behind our defense. It's very hard to do that with the length that we have. So if we keep these guys in front of us, which should be a thing we can do given our length, that is going to frustrate them as well because they're not going to beat us going face up. We have the length to control them. We just have to keep them in front of them. Final thing that I have, we're in Raleigh. We're at home. But as I mentioned, you just mentioned Jeremy Roach and Noshed Ormier, who have played in Raleigh before. They know this gym. They know this road in, right? They had to do it for 4 years. And we just need to play 40 minutes of focused basketball. Everyone who's in Durham for both the men and the women, I know the women play tonight, pack the gym, give them that boost, but make it where that boost is for them to focus. Because as we said, there has been times where this team kind of takes their foot off the gas or gets a little sloppy. We don't want to do that against Baylor and give them any room to kind of do this. We do not want to be the one seed that loses to an 8-9. We just don't. And the reason why those teams end up doing that is because they lack the focus for 40 minutes of basketball. If we can play 40 minutes of focused basketball, this team can move on to the next round and we can continue on the mission that is left before us. We have accomplished everything that we've wanted to do this year, save for one thing, that is winning a national championship. You can't do that unless you win on Sunday.
Yeah. Cherish the path, everybody. Cherish the journey. Because you never know.
Not the destination, it's the journey.
You never, I'm not saying I absolutely expect Duke to beat Baylor. There's no question about that. But from here on out, you're playing nothing but teams who are capable of beating you. No offense to Mount St. Mary's, they weren't really capable of beating Duke. We're now in the waters where bad things can happen, and you just hope that Duke brings it every time. Last thing I'll say is that Ken Pomeroy's computer projects that Duke beats Baylor by a score of 77-66. He says Baylor has about a 16% chance to win this game. So there you go. About a 1 in 6, I guess that is.
1 in 6 chance. Good math, Jason. Before we get out of here, Jason, there was something that actually dropped earlier today. The Jordan Brand Classic, which is one of the elite all-star games for high schoolers. If you think about the major circuit, of course, McDonald's All-American game is what everyone strives for, but Jordan Brand Classic is right there alongside it. And we have a lot of Duke representation in that game. The rosters were released a couple hours ago, and let me tell you about the guys who made the team. Cameron and Caden Boozer, of course, make the team. Nick Kaminia also makes the Jordan Brand Classic rosters. I think they split them up into teams. It's not like an East versus West thing, but there's 24 guys that make the team. Nate Ament, who has Duke amongst his finalists, and I don't think we've learned where he is going yet. I think he's waiting till the All-Star circuit, right? Right, Jason?
Yeah, you mean in terms of what school he's picked?
Correct.
Oh, yeah. No, we don't know yet. He's probably still, he's not going to decide until April. That's what they're saying.
Right. So it's around this time where all these different All-Star games are going on. He'll make his announcement.
You see big name guys make their announcement at the Jordan Brand. That's not an uncommon thing.
Yes. So he will be in this game. Also, there was a women's game similar to the McDonald's All-American game. Emily Skinner, who is number 6 in the 247 composite rankings, will be going to Duke next year. She will be in the women's game as well. And the great thing about this, Jason, is that this game will be taking place on April 18th right here in Washington, D.C. So I am planning on going to that game. It's going to be at the arena where the Washington Mystics play. It's not at Capital One, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. Caden Lewis, of course, we've talked about Caden Lewis on this show, good friend of mine. I will be going to watch him. He also made the roster for this game. So now you got to try to figure out how to make it a Duke party, and hopefully Nate will have committed by then and we can make it a big party. But either way, tune into the Jordan Brand Classic because there will be a lot of next year's Duke team, both of the men and the women, featured in that game.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing those All-Star games, but honestly, they're so far from my focus right now.
So far in the distance, yes. Mark your calendars for after the season, and hopefully I can just, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. Let's just focus on Baylor, which will be on Sunday. Again, we don't know what time it's going to be. Or what channel is going to be. That will be later tonight as we record on Friday. But the women are on in an hour. So good luck to the Duke women. We will talk about them when we reconvene on Sunday after the Duke men's play. But until then, this will do it for episode number 708. He's Jason Evans. I'm Donald Wine. Survive in advance, baby. Here's the Duke band. We're playing this out, and we're taking us just to Sunday.